tweet saying, quote, "Loyalty is everything. Don't you ever forget it." Let's bring in Ian Rappaport with more on this ongoing drama with the Texans. Ian, what's going on over there? What's the latest?
Well, there was a little bit of a development in the Deshaun Watson Texans situation. He did finally speak with David Culley, the new head coach of the Houston Texans, mostly out of respect for an NFL grinder who has worked his entire career to get where he is now and become a head coach. That conversation happened, but nothing changed. From my understanding, Watson reiterated the stance that he has had the entire time, which is that he wants to be traded. So when might we expect a possible trade? I've talked to several sources knee-deep in this quarterback world. A couple important things. No one I've spoken with for any of the teams, let's say, who may end up trading for a quarterback, no one believes that Deshaun Watson is going to get traded. That is one thing. As far as a timeline, the Texans do not view the start of free agency as any sort of deadline for anything. The draft may not even be a deadline. Translation, this is going to last for a very, very long time, MJ.
Oh, I guess we will be talking about it for a very, very long time. All right, Ian, thank you, but sit tight because we're going to check in with you in just a little bit for more news later. All right, let's bring in Steve Smith Sr. and Scott Pioli into this conversation. Great to see you both guys, by the way. But listen, this is starting to get a little bit interesting here. Deshaun clearly not happy with the situation. And when you start using words like loyalty, definitely indicates that things run real deep at this point. Can this relationship be repaired, Steve?
It doesn't look like it can be repaired. And for whatever reason, the Houston Texans have believed that they can wait this out. What you really are seeing right now is allowing a young man to voice his opinion through social media. And the Houston Texans are trying to figure it out, right? You can put duct tape on the PC pipe, but it's not going to fix anything. It's still going to leak. And it's manifested itself all through the house. It started in the basement. Now it's rising up to the first level, and it's going up, and it's going to rot out everything. And Houston needs to buckle up, Buttercup, because this is a game of chicken. And it seems like Deshaun Watson is willing to put his foot on the gas pedal even further and push that and accelerate that faster and faster.
Steve, I agree with you. I don't think there's a chance that this relationship is going to get repaired, but we've seen situations where players don't have good relationships and they still have to play. Let's remember, both sides have leverage. Right now, Deshaun has a leverage of public opinion and Twitter, and he's using it. I've never been a real big fan of family business being public, but this is a path that Deshaun has chosen. What was interesting about the tweet today was, you know, as MJ said, this was clearly directed at someone. And what's interesting here, though, is, again, Nick Caserio and David Culley weren't there when this thing unraveled. It would be important for Deshaun to be specific. If he's going to put some news out there, be specific about all the news. So to me, I agree with you, Steve. I don't think this is going to get resolved in terms of the relationship. But again, the team has a lot of leverage. We're looking at a player in Deshaun Watson that signed a brand new contract only 5 months ago. So right now he's a Texan. And again, Nick Caserio has seen things like this before, and he will probably act as he's seen in the past. And right now it doesn't look good. But again, we've seen things like this in the offseason before. Feelings will be hurt, people will be offended, but at some point in time, football's going to have to be played.
See, that's the part I love what you're saying, the old general manager talking. Yes, you believe football has to be played. But what if the player who decides now, Deshaun Watson is a guy who he has been brought up through humble beginnings. He's very intelligent, very smart, but he's also playing with house money. And let me tell you something, when you're playing with house money, that becomes very dangerous because you start to realize, I would rather sit than play for this team. Now, all of a sudden, you got egg on your face because you're trying to wait out somebody that you believe is impatient. So that tells me you have underestimated the people and the person that you're trying to wait out. I think Deshaun is willing to sit out the whole season just to prove a point that he no longer wants to play for the Houston Texans. Again, when you are playing with house money, when you're not supposed to be in the National Football League making all that money, you don't want to be on a team that you don't trust, I think he's willing to sit out and see them fall over their face. David Culley is a fantastic guy. I'm not sure he's the head coach that I want to be playing for.
Oh, listen, this is a high-stakes situation, guys, and the writing seems to be all over the social media walls. All right, guys, thank you. Meantime, in Seattle, a similar situation might be brewing with Russell Wilson. A report by The Athletic this morning detailed how Wilson and the team are not on the same page. Wilson reportedly wants to take a greater role in game planning and roster development. So, with the frustrations on both sides bubbling up, we bring back Ian Rappaport. How realistic is it, Ian, that Russell Wilson could be moved?
As of right now, it does not seem realistic. It seems more like a rift, something that's very real, a relationship that absolutely has to be repaired between the Seahawks brass and Russell Wilson. But as far as a trade, is Seattle a team that is really ready to contend, able to deal with a $40 million cap hit for trading Russell Wilson? And Pete Carroll is 70 years old. Is he really going to rebuild unless there's some sort of replacement for Russell Wilson? That's why this seems a little far-fetched. That being said, teams are calling. From what I understand, more than 10 teams have called Seattle about Russell Wilson. There hasn't been much engagement. It's not like Seattle has been weighing offers, but at least teams are still calling. Meanwhile, Russell Wilson has not requested a trade, but has made it known that if someone wanted to trade for him, there are only a couple places he would go, including Chicago, who needs a quarterback, and the Saints, who need a quarterback.
All right, interesting stuff there, and I'm not surprised that teams are calling. Wouldn't you, if Russell was potentially on the board? I think so. All right, Ian, thank you. And earlier today, we got a chance to catch up with Seahawks linebacker KJ Wright. Here's what he had to say about the Wilson situation.
Yeah, this team, we know that this team goes as Russell goes. He's been a quarterback going on a decade now, and he's, led us to 12 wins, I feel like every season. And so Russ is definitely going to be here, and just what he brings to the table. He's someone that I personally look up to. Him being NFL Man of the Year, what he does for, his teammates and the community, is something that even an older guy like myself looks up to. And so I can't wait to see him be in the Seahawks jersey next year, and I'm hoping that I'm with him.
He kept it very candid, and you'll see more of that interview with KJ Wright tomorrow on Total Access. Right now, though, Steve and Scott, should the Seahawks move on from Russell Wilson if they get the right offer? And Scott, as a GM, is that crazy to even say?
I wouldn't move on from Russell Wilson. He's too good of a player. And again, going back to the points we were just making before, this is the offseason. Plus, there's no combine. This is the time for noise and the saber rattling to go on. This situation is different. I agree with Steve that Deshaun Watson has a great deal of leverage, but with Russell Wilson, I think it's a different set of circumstances and a different situation and a different front office and head coach who's been there for a while and are established, and they're not looking to start over at this point in their careers. So I really don't see Russell Wilson moving on.
I love what you're saying, Scott, but also you have to look at it. Generally, this happens, and it's been kind of a pattern here with the Seattle Seahawks. When you look at under the tenure of Pete Carroll, long in the tooth or veteran players over time have seemed to wear out their welcome, or something goes awry that an exit happens. It's happened with Earl Thomas. It's happened with Richard Sherman. It's happened with Marshawn Lynch. There's a number of guys over time, as they become older, the messages start to wear on them. The enthusiasm that you hear that they have in Seattle starts to get old. And when you have a head coach that's been there long enough, and you are a player that has been there long enough, it's easy to start mouthing verbatim exactly what the head coach is going to say, because you've heard this before. You've heard this and seen this slide. The team building activities, it starts to get redundant. And so that's just part of the league and the process. But it does get old when you're not winning. The message is still the same, and the results are not up to the message of what we've heard for the third or fourth time.
And guys, and for you at home, just to underscore some of the disparity here in Wilson's frustration, he's the only QB in NFL history to have 30 or more passing touchdowns and sacked 40 or more times in consecutive seasons. I mean, he has done this so in the last 4 straight seasons since 2017. All right, guys, thank you. And the quarterback carousel is spinning fast, so fast that the Eagles have already unofficially parted ways with Carson Wentz, reuniting him with former offensive coordinator Frank Reich in Indy. And though he couldn't comment on his QB to be by name, of course, Reich's confident that the new guy will get the Colts where they want to go.
We do believe like we have the right roster, we have the right culture. And, you know, getting good quarterback play is something that is necessary to win a world championship. And obviously here in this organization, the standard has been set. And I feel like we've gotten good quarterback play in recent years, in our 3 years here as well. So we need to continue to have that kind of play and even continue to improve upon that kind of play for us to win a world championship.
Coming up on NFL Total Access, the Buccaneers went from 7-9 in 2019 to the NFL's highest peak a year later.
Bucs are the Super Bowl champs. Hallelujah.
One key member of Tampa's turnaround is our guest.
That was big. That was big. That was big.
Protect, protect, protect. Tempo, tempo, tempo. No, no, no.
I'm going to put the dagger in him. Watch.
Alvin. Picked off by Devin White to the 40.
Way to go, buddy. This is what we do. This is what we do.
Ah, yes, the NFC South, as we know it, could be on its way to a new look. Here's where each team stands relative to the approximate salary cap for 2021. Carolina and Tampa have plenty of space, but Atlanta and New Orleans could be in trouble. In fact, New Orleans is estimated to be further over the 2021 salary cap than any team in the league. So what's the dream scenario for each team in the NFC South as they approach this offseason? Steve Smith Sr. and Scott Pioli are back with us now, 2 guys that know this division very well. Scott, we'll start with your former team, the Falcons. What is the best case offseason scenario in terms of additions for Atlanta?
Best case scenario is that they've got to get some cap space first of all, and one of the best ways to do that is by moving on from certain players. And I believe that trading Dante Fowler and acquiring a draft pick for him would be ideal for the team. Right now, he's sitting at a cap number that it's at $18.5 million, which is far too high. If they trade him and get a little bit of currency in terms of draft picks, they can pick up $9.2 million of cap space. If they don't get a trade, that dream's going to go away and they'll have to release him and pick up $10 million possibly after the June 1st. Now, the other thing that I see as a trade scenario and the big benefit that the Falcons could get is they're sitting at number 4 now. One of the best things that I think that they can do is trade backwards, acquire picks, get more draft currency, because when you're in cap trouble, you have to build your team through the draft, make it younger and cheaper. So move back from 4 deep enough to gather picks, but also put yourself in position where you could get that quarterback of the future, maybe Mac Jones.
All right, Scott, one of these days I'm going to have to take a look at that binder that you use to sort of do all of these equations and figure out all of these scenarios there. Steve, let's go to you. What about the Panthers? What's the dream offseason scenario for Carolina?
I mean, living here in North Carolina, the dream scenario on the radio, in the paper, on the streets is why not go down the street? Anderson, South Carolina is just down the street, 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 12 minutes to be exact. Round trip is about 271 yards, 271 miles. So obviously, Deshaun Watson, that's what they want. When you talk about the Carolina Panthers and a Deshaun Watson, you all automatically associate that with their Super Bowl run in 2015 with Cam Newton. They want a quarterback. Now, that's nothing against Teddy Bridgewater. That's just saying dream scenario. But also, at the end of the day, that's a dream scenario. But realistically, they need to build their defense. They have not found a guy to anchor that middle with the absence of an early retirement of a Luke Kuechly, and then they also need another corner outside of Dante Jackson. They have Jeremy Chin, who's a safety, but also plays linebacker as well. They just relieved KK Short or Brian Burns on the outside, so you need to have another guy in the interior D-line, 2 guys to help Brown that they acquired, but also to replace KK Short, because that allows those interior linemen to get active. And what's the best offense? Is to slow, the best offense is to have a defense that can slow down the opposing offense.
All right, that's a long list, but I guess in dreams, there are no limits, Steve. All right, let's keep things going with the Saints. Scott, what are you dreaming up for New Orleans this offseason?
This is interrupted sleep when you start talking about the New Orleans Saints. This is not a dream. And when you look at this, there's so much. You look at the fact that they've reduced Drew Brees down to the minimum wage for veterans, and they're still sitting at $69 million over the cap. So again, unfortunately, what you're dreaming about is not acquisitions and not the fun stuff of building your team up. You're going to have to start to deconstruct your team and think about the future. One of the players that I think that they could move on from this year is Quan Alexander, who's in the last year of his deal. And if they were to trade Quan and possibly pick up a little bit of currency in terms of draft picks, they can pick up $13.2 million of cap space. Again, the reward there is draft currency for either this year's draft or in 2022. Then the next dream that I woke up to, again, these aren't dreams that I could go through. I woke up to this one, and that was having to trade Janoris Jenkins, who's going to be 33 years old this season and has a cap number of $14.2 million. That's definitely something that they need to move on. Hopefully, they can trade him. Now, the cap savings would only be about $8.2 million, but maybe even getting a late round pick, getting something for these situations is what the Saints need to be dreaming of.
All right, here we go. I guess melatonin might be required in that sense. All right, finally, the Super Bowl champs. Steve, what's the dream scenario for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this offseason?
The dream scenario for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers has to be, hopefully they can sign all 24 of their unrestricted free agents. But that's not going to happen. And now they have to pick and choose who they're going to keep. And Chris Godwin is a very interesting conversation, because you've heard some noise out there. Well, I wouldn't necessarily believe a guy would leave for money and change up a new system. I'm not sure what Kool-Aid they're drinking, but that's the whole point of becoming a free agent. Understanding, especially after winning a Super Bowl, that you bring some equity, automatic equity to that team, and also understanding when you don't sign a contract now when it's that time, think about how many players over the years have waited an extra year or given a discount, and then they've gotten injured. And now all of a sudden, that contract that was on the table is no longer on the table. So I don't believe that giving a hometown discount, that's not feasible, because at the end of the day, these players will not be given hometown discounts when they're released. They will not be giving half of their contract when they're released. So I don't believe they should operate in the same realm. And I think when organizations do that, it's a little bit of gamesmanship that shouldn't be played.
Well, maybe we could.
Prescott, the #1 passer in the league, but they're not winning.
The season is hanging in the balance.
Prescott breaks the tackle.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Cowboy fans, here's your worst nightmare.
I feel terrible for him. I have no doubt that he'll bounce back from this.
Is going right to the hospital for surgery. I suspect he knows his season's over.
This little adversity is just going to be another chapter in the book. I'm ready to get this journey of the comeback started. So God bless you all. Thank you.
Oh, man, but here we go again. It's a Dak contract saga 2.0 as we bring back Ian Rappaport. Ian, the franchise tag window has been open for a couple days now. Is there any progress being made on a deal between Prescott and the Cowboys?
Well, they're going to try. And first of all, let's get to the most important thing first. Dak Prescott is going to be the Cowboys quarterback in 2021. If they cannot get a deal done by March 9th, if they can't get a deal done then by the middle of July, they are going to tag him, and then he is going to play on his second franchise tag. And after that, buckle up, because then, of course, he'll hit free agency. But we're not there yet. He is going to be the Cowboys quarterback. What they're going to try to do is find some middle ground, probably in the high 30s per year, maybe even $40 million plus per year, to try to get something done. Last year they tried. It was really a battle of, was Dak Prescott going to get the 4-year deal he wanted or succumb to the 5-year deal the Cowboys wanted? They were never able to get together, so he played on the franchise tag. They're going to try again. We'll see if they're able to get something done for real this time by March 9th. Talks are going better than they were, let's say, at this time last year. Still a huge gap to bridge. Obviously, plenty of time to do it, though.
This is a story that all of Dallas is looking at very closely. Let's bring in former GM Scott Pioli into this mix. Because, Scott, players generally don't love being hit with that franchise tag once, much less twice. So if the Cowboys end up tagging him again, is that going to have an impact on his long-term relationship with the team?
MJ, it won't help the relationship. Players understand it the first time. Now, I want to be straight. They don't like it, but they understand it. That's business in the NFL, so they accept it. But if it happens a second time, then they feel like they're being made an example of, and or they're just not being given any freedom whatsoever. You know, I go back to a time back in 2002, long time ago, I understand, but we franchise tagged Adam Vinatieri in 2002. It led to a short-term, longer-term, but short-term deal for 3 years. Then in 2005, he became a free agent again, and we tagged him again. He had to play that season, but I'll tell you this, the relationship from that point and during the entire season was cold. So players do not like this. They take offense to the second time. And as I mentioned earlier, they don't like it the first time, but they accept it as business. They move on. They hope for a longer-term deal. But I can guarantee you, if the Cowboys have to head down this road again and Dak Prescott gets it, he won't like it at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable for him to feel a way about that. All right, Scott, thank you. But listen, when it comes to Dak, you always have to consider who's around him as well. And assuming Dak remains a Cowboy, he's got quite the group of pass catchers to work with. We saw early in the 2020 season when he led the league in passing with the big three of Cooper, Lamb, and Gallup, each of whom racked up over 800 yards and 5 touchdowns last season. Analytics expert Cynthia Freeland and Steve Smith joined me now. Steve, I know you have a lot to say on this topic, but I'm going to give Cynthia the floor first. By the way, Cynthia has an article out today breaking down all 32 wide receiver groups around the league. Check that out at NFL.com/Freeland. All right, Cynthia, though, I'd love to hear your top 3 running back groups. Rank them for me. Who's at number 3?
Well, at number 3, Bills Mafia, I'm looking at you. Obviously, Stephon Diggs was the reception leader this season, but it's a team effort. And as a team, they averaged 3.3 yards of separation per route run. That's ridiculous. That's the 3rd best in the NFL. You have the slot guy, Cole Beasley. He had the most yards from the slot. You have Gabriel Davis, the rookie, who had 4 deep touchdowns. By the way, the Bills overall had 10. Only 1 was by Diggs. So they spread the field out. They also were great closer to the line of scrimmage. This wide receiving group, 3rd best, great architecture by Brian Daboll.
Oh, I love that. And Cynthia, of course, the Bills made it to that AFC Championship game in part because of that wide receiver group. All right, who do you have at number 2?
Well, at number 2, the Atlanta Falcons come in with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. When you look at Calvin Ridley, you may not know this, but he's a really great route runner. Super precise. The timing is always there. When you track him, he's almost like a video game. It's so perfect. So if you look to see 51 receptions and 1,027 yards on passes of 10+ air yards, that was the most in the NFL per Next Gen Stats. And by the way, for fun, that was 10 more receptions of 10+ yards than Stephon Diggs, just so you know.
Got it. Noted. Take it down. I know that Steve's wheels are turning here, but we got one more. And when we think of number 1, a certain team with an affinity for throwing Lombardi trophies comes to mind, Cynthia. Tell me, who is your top-ranked wide receiver group?
I feel like I'm going to surprise Steve so much with this one, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Ooh, shock and awe. If you look to see it, the combination of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and this, of course, assumes that Chris Godwin will be back and likely Antonio Brown. We're looking at it right now. We don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. But if you look to see those targets of 10+ air yards, they had 17 touchdowns on such targets. So the deep passing was really working really well for this team. This was the 3rd most in the NFL in terms of touchdowns. That's great. Wide receiving group, it really doesn't get much better for Tom Brady than this.
Well, Cynthia, you did a fantastic job with your article, and actually, you did all the heavy lifting. So I just get to come in, and I highlighted and starred what I loved. And so I picked out 2 teams really off such a fantastic article. Go on NFL.com, look at it. It's very detailed. You can use it for fantasy football or just wanting to know in-depth information about wide receivers as a group. And one of the things I picked up off of your article was the New England Patriots. With the uncertainty at quarterback, that obviously is something that we're not traditionally used to seeing with the New England Patriots. So to be able to complement whoever they bring in, whether it's free agency or through the draft, what do you have to do? According to Cynthia's article, they only earned 3 touchdowns over a target of 10-plus air yards, tied for second fewest. Getting an impact wide receiver will help that, with also having a new quarterback, either through free agency or through the draft. And then also, too, when you look at the Detroit Lions, she broke down the Detroit Lions and talked fantastic about them. However, I had to put that with the Los Angeles Rams, because that guy who's in the top 5 of air yards, explosive passes, is now Matthew Stafford for the Los Angeles Rams. I'm excited to see that, because you know with Matthew Stafford, he's seen all of the blitz packages. He knows all of the hot routes. He understands the creative mind that he lacked in Detroit. Now he has it at his full disposal with Sean McVay, and seeing in what he will be able to do with those outstanding route runners and great route combination put together by Sean McVay. And then with Sam Akers, what he is bringing to the table in the run game, what Detroit has lacked, consistently running the ball, taking some of that heavy lifting off of Matt Stafford, will be remarkable. So again, your article was fantastic, printed up about 7, 8, 10 pages, and I loved it. And I'm going to use that heading into free agency frenzy coming. So I just want to let you know I'm cheating with your paperwork. Thank you.
Listen, let me tell you something. I agree with Steve completely. Cynthia always makes us all look really, really good and smart. So if you want to leg up on all your friends as you get into free agency, make sure you check out that article, NFL.com/Freeland. Thank you both so much. 5-time Pro Bowler Aqib Talib played the last games of his career with the Rams back in 2018 and 19. Tomorrow on Total Access, the Locker Room podcast, Michael Robinson and Brian Billick asked Talib if Jared Goff was the problem in LA. Here's a sneak peek.
This week on Total Access, the Locker Room. I ain't gonna lie, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've said it on television, I said it on our airways. Anybody that's
you ain't like it?
I ain't never think he could win games with strictly his arm. Did he challenge you guys at practice? Because I know in Seattle,
he did.
Sherman was at Russell Wilson all the time.
Man, we had big battles with our offense in practice, man, and it looked good to me. I seen JG make roll this way, the regular.
We have a Super Bowl champion in the house, Buccaneers wide receiver Chris Godwin, and thank you so much for coming through.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I love the sound of that. Super Bowl champion.
Hey, that'll never get old. You know what else will never get old? We saw just a little bit of it there in that clip. That moment with you and the real GOAT, in my opinion, your fiance Mariah, there on the field after the game. I mean, did you guys talk about what it would feel like meeting up afterwards, and how did that compare to that actual moment coming to fruition?
Honestly, we never really talked about it. You know, I think it was more so like, you know, like if we win, like just make sure like you know we find each other, and from that point we were just like whatever happens. And honestly, like I forgot I was mic'd up, so I didn't know that like that clip was a thing until it started blowing up on social media, and I'm like that's so awesome. Like now we have that moment together, and you know that we're able to share, and everybody gets to see that. Like that's so cool. That's so cool.
That's what made it so beautiful. I mean, I felt that hug in my soul. Congratulations to the both of you. I'm excited to potentially see some wedding plans for you down the way after the apocalypse. But listen, earlier in the show, our analytics expert, Cynthia Freeland, she called the Bucs receiving corps the best in the NFL right now. I would imagine that you will not disagree with her in that accord. But what made that group so unique, in your opinion?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think we have so many different, you know, types of guys in terms of like skill set. You know, Mike's, you know, this big dominant receiver. You know, and you got Scotty Miller, who's a little guy, but he's so blazing fast. You know, then obviously you got AB. We all know what AB can bring, and then you got myself and Tyler Johnson, who you know are pretty similar players in what we do. You know, we do a lot of the grimy work. You know, make the contested catches and stuff like that. So you got a real diverse group of guys, and I think the best part is that we're all so unselfish. You know, we all just want to see the team win, you know, no matter what our numbers look like.
Yeah, you guys may be unselfish, but the team as a whole definitely greedy, just stacking up that whole receiver group. Hey, it worked out in your favor for sure. Listen, of course, you will be a free agent next month, and you've been very vocal about wanting to return, but you also know your worth here and getting paid accordingly. So the franchise tag, of course, still out there as a possibility. Would you be okay with that option if that's what keeps you in Tampa?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, similar to like a lot of guys, obviously we all want to have, long-term security, we all want to be able to take care of the people that we love, so like that's the ideal situation. But, a franchise tag is not something that I can control, so if that's what keeps me here, then that's what it is, and I'll play on it and, go back to the war with my guys. Like I said, I love it here in Tampa. I love what we have building, and I would love to stay.
I would imagine that another big part of what you love so much about Tampa is the men calling the plays and the women as well. Listen, Byron Leftwich, though, played a key role in this Super Bowl run, called a masterful game in your win over Kansas City. Do you think Leftwich gets enough credit?
Honestly, I don't think so. I don't think he gets the credit that he really, deserves. But if it's one thing I know about him is that, he's not really looking for the credit. He just wants to win just like all of us. And I think, we have something really special. He being that he played in the NFL, played quarterback, he has a unique perspective that most coaches don't really have. And as players, we respect that. He comes to work every single day. He's the same guy. Win, lose, or draw, Super Bowl, preseason game. He has the same mentality, same attack mentality. And, and he's always going to keep it real with you. So, like I say, I don't think he gets the credit he deserves, but I don't necessarily know if he's out here looking, for all the praise anyway.
All right, well, keep it real with me for 1 second, Chris, because before I let you go, we've talked a ton about the Brady impact, Tom Brady joining this Tampa team. Please tell me that he shared with you his secret of reverse aging, and can you please let the rest of us know how we can also do that?
I would love to have that secret. I've been watching this guy for, the entire year now, and I'm trying to figure it out, but, he don't let it up, there's something there. There's a little bit of magic or something going on with Tommy. But, my guy's been balling for so long, and he's going to keep doing it. I'm proud of him, proud to be his teammate, proud to be a part of history.
We will get down to that mystery one of these days. In the meantime, Chris, continue to enjoy that Super Bowl championship moniker, as I know you guys try to just get through this offseason and potentially run it back next year. All right, Chris Godwin, thank you so much.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
It's up to you. Schick Hydro.
All right, Charlie Casserly released his first mock of the year today on NFL.com. Here's the top 10. Yep, that's 3 QBs in the top 5, including a trade up as the Panthers make a move for North Dakota State's Trey Lance. Here's Charlie on why that's the right move for both Carolina and Atlanta.
It's February. It's a mock draft. You got to have a trade, don't you? All right, Atlanta. Matt Ryan, still playing at a good enough level to get you to the playoffs. Has some weapons around him. They need a running back. Hey, let's move back in the draft. We could even move back past Carolina and get Najee Harris. Now we got a running attack. We got the Shanahan system coming, and I know he's not the coach, but it's his system, and that's the system Ryan had the most success in. Now, Carolina, they're going to do everything they can and move every mountain to get a quarterback. Well, now we're in the draft and we don't have one, so we move up and we pick up Trey Lance. Now, I think he's better than Carson Wentz coming out, not because Wentz is